All right, everyone. You know what time it is. It is 8 p.m. What does 8 p.m. mean? Oh, I'm going to tell you what it means. Oh, yeah, it is time. It's back. We got to go in. It's episode 5. It's Obi-Wan. There's only one left. We got to turn up. All right, let's bring our guest forward. We got Rob. How you doing there, Rob?
I'm doing great. How are you doing tonight, Marwan?
Oh, you already know. I'm not even going to say it. People get tired of me hearing it. I mean, how could I be so blessed after all? You know what I'm saying? They're
You
going to
got the
get you.
sound effects with you too, my friend.
That's what I'm saying. Doug, how you doing tonight?
Doing much better after hearing those horns. That was beautiful.
They're back. They're back. They're back by popular demand, or I should say, back by Matt demand. Matt, how you doing? The horns are back.
Doug couldn't have said it better. The horns just fired us right up. We're ready to go.
Well, you know what? We're not even going to hesitate. We're going to go right in. Man, we got a great Jedi battle in this episode. So let's jump in. You know, I don't even want to set the stage right now. The gauntlet has been thrown, and we're just going to see. I'm going to talk about it at the end of the night. I'm not even going to tell the audience what the preface is behind that. But just know there's been a challenge issued in the background. And those don't even know that's on the panel what the challenge is.
Whoa.
I'm just saying it's gonna be good. It's gonna be good. So, the end of episode 4 ends with Reva putting the tracker in, Vader force choking her through the air, right? And we start in this episode. Now, Doug, really quickly, you weren't on the show last week. How did you feel about last week's show? The three of us weren't too enthused about it.
I think it was one of the weaker episodes of the series so far. There's some things I kind of give them the benefit of the doubt on, but I do love seeing Obi-Wan sneak around that dark room and do some stealth moves. And I could watch a show of him just deflecting, laser bolts back and forth at stormtroopers all day. So it wasn't the best, but it served a purpose, I think, for me.
Even when they're on this 12 and his 6 and he's only facing in his 12 and they still can't hit him from the back in a corridor, but okay. Just saying. but I digress. So let's get into this episode. They start off and they're they're hiding out, right? And Matt, you literally just watched the episode. So why don't you take us through the beginning piece, because it's like fresh in your mind.
Yeah, I think it opens on the flashback, right? Which I think we can start with the flashback a little bit, because I loved the flashback. Thought it was fantastic. I'm a big prequel defender, so seeing Obi-Wan back with Anakin, and I love arrogant Obi-Wan with his quips, right? With his kind of sarcasm and the wittiness, and he's seeing that dynamic with Anakin and Hayden Christensen. And I know there was some gripes online about they didn't de-age them enough. I didn't even care. Like, I was in the scene and them actually Jedi battling, and then having that mirror. And I thought Deborah Chow did a great job of having that mirror this episode, right? It was a flash. It wasn't just a fan service flashback. It actually had some meat with the story, right? It's how Obi-Wan outwitted Vader in this case, and because he knows his Padawan so well. So that's where we started there. But yeah, Robin, Doug, thoughts on did you guys like the flashback as well, or what was your thoughts, since that's where we started?
I enjoyed the flashback. I mean, just the opening pan scene of seeing Coruscant again and seeing all of that, and Anakin looking out over it. As for the de-aging, I thought that they did, I mean, both of those guys haven't really, I mean, it's 20 years, so yes, they've aged, but not nearly as much as it could have, so I thought it looked rather decent. And to watch the two of them spar, to fight back and forth and using the Force in that way, and you can see, well, I guess it's hints of Vader in there when Anakin's fighting him because of the force that he's using on him when he's just, swinging the sword or swinging the lightsaber at him and that. And I would say that I think that the flashbacks served an incredibly great purpose, like you said, for points of the story. But I would also say it's how Vader interprets Obi-Wan, not just Obi-Wan interpreting Vader. Okay. Because Vader is going, okay, well, I know he's going to do this, this, and this, just like Obi-Wan's going, because they know each other so well. So I enjoyed it.
Doug, jump in there.
Man, I mean, Rob captured it really well. I don't know what else to say. I thought it was, it was one of the highlights of this episode and maybe of the whole series for me. And like as the story progresses and we get more of the flashbacks, like it really tugged on my heartstrings. You see how close these guys were. They really were brothers and brothers in arms, and it just it makes it more tragic that to see where they're at now, and Vader's just so angry and menacing. But it's cool that Obi-Wan remembers this, and like in this episode I think we're seeing Obi-Wan kind of remember his calling to be a Jedi, and there's little hints here and there throughout the episode where he's kind of getting back into his leadership role and more of the idealist and helping people, and so I really like this episode for those reasons. I do have some gripes, but we'll get to that later.
So kind of my takeaway from that is the de-aging didn't bother me either. I actually appreciated it. And since I haven't watched the prequels, I'm not thinking, oh man, he was much younger back then. It looked really good to me. What I like about it is I always talk about in my own life that everything is a teachable moment. So no matter what's going on, there's a lesson that's being taught throughout. And so Obi-Wan is teaching Anakin while they're fighting, right? And that there, as Rob was saying, Anakin is learning while Obi-Wan is teaching, and so that reflects later on as the episode goes, and they're both thinking about that. So when it cuts from that first piece, you see Vader staring in the glass, and you can see his reflection, and he's pondering on the fight, right? And looking at strategy and whatnot. So I did really enjoy that. So that really kind of set the stage for the episode, which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah, it also gives this is the first hint of because I think the scene implied that Vader was kind of meditating on some of those moments, and that was kind of fueling some of the rage. But what was great is there's so many shots throughout the canon of Vader just brooding, staring into empty space. It was nice to actually get into his head of what's he thinking about, right? Like how many shots are there of just Vader looking out the glass, right? It's such a common shot, so it was really nice to oh, okay, he's actually pondering stuff.
So now they're on the planet, right? They land, and Reva comes with cannon fodder. 1,000 stormtroopers, and this conversation ensues with Obi-Wan, and first off, so here's one of my gripes that I had. They have all the blaster fire, and then when she decides to, she just cuts through the door like butter and then comes in. It's like I just don't understand it. What was the point of all that if she could just cut through it? Your thoughts on that? Because that just kind of, I think, Matt, you were saying this episode kind of went up and down for you. It was like, so what were your thoughts there?
Yeah, that to me, rewatching it, I actually liked it better the second time I jumped through because maybe I was prepared for some of the weird moments, but I think Deborah Chow is fantastic of nailing the emotion, and the story itself is good. I even think the writing for the most part is good, and the beat. This was such a good episode in terms of theme and of story and of actually telling this new kind of conflict between Vader and Obi-Wan. But the part of where we went back and forth from just really good Star Wars to just really clunky was some of the action set pieces. And I feel like this is the first one. It was something about the choreography and how they set it up. It just made it really, really clunky. And so there's all these kind of moments of why are they doing that? And you're right, her just cutting through. In Star Wars, usually the story group, I think, usually does a pretty good job of keeping the canon tight, right? That's one of the things fans have loved so much about Star Wars is the world is very lived in. They pay attention to the details, right? There's in a lot of the lore, it's like they explore why there's this, why there's that. And you remember some of the original scenes when Jedi want to get through doors, you're right, they just cut a hole, right? And then they can go through. That's a very common trope in the Clone Wars. And to the point of like when Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon in episode 1 are trying to get to the command center of the droid control ship, they're starting to cut through, right? And then they close more blast doors. So they easily could have done something like that to explain why, but then to have her do that. So that's, I think, specifically regarding the action cut piece of, there just wasn't enough thought regarding some of the mechanics of story. And this is stuff Star Wars fans know really well, right? Closing the blast doors is like a very common saying, right? This is kind of, I feel, Star Wars 101 of you close the blast doors, right, to prevent something like this from happening, So I agree. And that's where I think this episode for me oscillated back and forth of like, there was just some of this action choreography kind of dynamic that really was very clunky. And agree, kind of like scratched your head of like, yeah, if they just welded a bar on the door, right? Like what, like that doesn't seem to be a very strong, blockade.
Matt, Doug?
Yeah, it felt a little clunky, and like with this episode, like both times I watched, I had to rewind and be like, "Whoa, wait, why did they do that now? Or why did they let this person go? Why?" I was trying, and it didn't quite register with me, but I feel like it moves so quickly that you can kind of just brush these things off sometimes, but it is a little distracting. I think overall, though, I still found the flashbacks and some of these other plot points in the episode to be more powerful and emotional for me, so I still left liking it. But it's the same with the chasing. All these episodes where they're chasing people.
Yeah.
Like, come on, guys. There's got it's got to be a better way to execute some of this.
Yeah.
So Rob, do you agree with Doug in that regard that it was a little bit clunky, but it moved fast enough through it that it didn't kind of take you so far out of it, like it's like, oh come on man, here we go again?
Yes, and one, I would say that we skipped a part there where Vader, after looking through the glass, out comes Reva, and to make her the Grand Inquisitor at that point.
Yeah.
And she is, now he's given her everything that she's schemed and plotted for. It's like, yeah, I've done all this so that I can get this position. And as we find out later, there was even a further scheme in there. And I would, say in the scene that we're now talking about where they come up and they cut through the door, the only excuse I'll give you for that is they hit that door with the heavy blaster like 5 or 6 times to weaken the door. Okay. And I would still go back with the Star Wars lore. And I agree with both of you that there should be blast doors. But if we're going to suspend disbelief, they weakened that door up with that blaster because it was red hot while she was talking to him. So she, just cut through it.
Now who can apologize? Yeah. Oh my goodness, man.
It's a good point.
That's a good point. Wow.
I like that, Rob.
Hey, look, if Matt can apologize for the prequels, and I'm coming around to his side with these nice cutscenes they're giving us and stuff, I value it a little more than when it first came around. So,
No, that's a good point. I didn't think of that. I'm willing to give that scene a little more of a pass now. Can we take a moment to just pause that the Inquisitor ranking system are badges, like little Boy Scout badges, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
You just get a badge when you kind of move up rank. I thought that was so funny that they just pin the little officers pin the Grand Inquisitor badge on there.
You completed the steps for this badge.
Yep.
And you won't be alive for long, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Now, what's his name? Leia's, surrogate father sends a message to Obi-Wan, which I thought was extremely dangerous. Like, why would he take the chance and send that message?
Yeah, that was another one. My brother Nicky and I talked about this too. Of like, this is the one thing you guys are like. Luke's location is probably the most sensitive piece of information, and you want to open just kind of openly say tattoo it. It just does not make does not make any sense. And then are there no security message? Like, do you not have like a thumbprint right on these?
Yeah.
Like, how is this just able to play? Yeah, I thought that was like a really weird plot mechanic to kind of go with that. Like,
it's hey, Doug, I haven't seen Matt today. I'm gonna go down to 1201 Park Avenue in Bremerton and check on him and see if he's in his office. Like, send it in a message. Hopefully, this doesn't get intercepted.
Right.
Here, let me share that Google map with you for where it is.
Oh gosh. I mean, I know that. Yeah, I get the ethos of it, and that scene with Tala where he sees that, right, and he's clearly he knows he's behind schedule, and then that's what I'm talking about. That I think perfectly for me, and overall I think the episode was a success because then Tala comes and is like, hey, we're all traumatized. Like, I had to round up these force sensitive kids and watch as the Empire killed them. And now this is what I'm doing, right? Every notch on my belt, which I love the subversion. There's a lot of Western themes that George Lucas used, right? And in the Ahsoka's coming out episode in The Mandalorian season 2, it's a very Western style showdown episode, right? So there's a lot of that Western inspiration. I love the flip, right? Tala is this amazing character that normally, right, the notches are for like people you've killed. And then for her, she's such a light side character, right? For her, the notches are children she saved. So I thought that was and then Obi is like, this is kind of Obi finally, like Doug said, taking on the general duties, right? He's finally like, he's coming out, he's proactive, he's not hesitant. And I think that's kind of that, that was that last piece, a little pep talk by Tall of kind of, that theme of, all right, you still can deal with the past trauma and also, be a force for good. That the trauma doesn't have to keep you on the bench.
So dig into that, Matt and Rob. The really powerful thing about Tala, which I would almost say maybe my favorite character in this whole series, is she could have easily quit when she found out what was going on, but she stayed. And there's a real life instance that we have right here in Kitsap that happened in real life where things were happening and the person stepped down because it was just too much, right? But for her to stay, understanding that she's gonna see things that are deplorable, she might have to still do things that are deplorable in order, to try to achieve the greater good. Really, I think they really did a good job unfolding her story over her arc of this 5 episodes. Matt and Rob, your thoughts on that?
I enjoyed Tala as a character. I thought she was a great character. Just the whole story, like you were saying, Matt. The notches being the children she saved, and the Western themes all the way through Star Wars. They're all over the place. I mean, could we say Cad Bane? I mean, But besides those things, I mean, to see her and Obi-Wan interact and that shared trauma kind of, well, not shared trauma, but we've all faced this. We can still go forward. You can still go forward. And to see him to step out and go, okay, you know what? There's no way we win. They have more numbers, but we can hold them off. We can escape. We can do these things. And there you see General Kenobi reemerge, and to see him looking and realizing, like, when he was staring at the wall and seeing all the carvings on the wall, and he looks down and the sheer number of Jedi that came through there with the lightsabers laying there and the robes. And it's, you know what? These guys all came through here. They helped these people. I can do this because this is, I mean, he did this all the way through the Clone Wars and everything. He can, and I think he successfully, as you'll see further through the episode, successfully did what he set out to do at a cost, but it was still done. So.
Wow. Yeah, gave me chills just hearing you re-describe that, Rob. That yeah, it's a beautiful scene, and the actress Indira Varma who plays Tala, I thought, boy, she really knocks it out of the park. She really makes you believe this terrible experience that she had serving in the Empire. And I like when Star Wars is a very light and fun, kid-friendly, mostly series, but as you get older, man, I do like to know that there's like these dark depths, and life is hard, so it's nice to
Yeah.
relate to characters who've experienced that, but also to see this being another one of those touchstones that really kind of ignites Obi-Wan to, tap back into his inner hero. I think is really, really special.
So the last, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I was just it's I feel like Tala has been this experience for Obi. Like, Obi's been so isolated, right? Probably Bale's the only one, and he didn't really pick up Bale's call at first either, right? Bale had to actually go there, and Tala's been this, like, I think, opening of and you saw that 2 episodes ago when you kind of saw her smuggling operation, and to actually know there is still people, right? It's not all lost, right? There's still people that are organized, that are fighting the fight, right? And you see this as, probably an early rebel cell. In Star Wars Rebels, they called these cells, I believe, and so this maybe is, an early rebel cell, of smugglers. And so I think that's her, him then realizing, oh, the fight is still happening, right? There's still good. I'm not completely alone, right? Because trauma often makes you feel completely alone. And by and large, because Owen's keeping him at arm's length from Luke, so he doesn't even really have much contact with Luke, right? He can't even give him a toy, and and then now he's really just living at the meat factory, watching people, workers' rights violations happening day in, day out, and then so it's a pretty lonely existence. I feel like there is this, like, right? You can hear him, like, when he says that name, and this, like, connection. Oh my gosh, it's not all lost. And so I think that I love that kind of coming home, and Tala serving as that, passionate kind of rekindling. So yeah, Rob and Doug, right on.
The last thing I'll say about Tala, and probably one of the only redeeming qualities of the last episode, was the conversation with Riva, which was so convincing. Like, maybe I'm on your side, maybe I'm a spy of a spy, right? There was no fear in her. She knew exactly what, how she felt, and she was able to hold it to where Riva, who is, force sensitive, and can, what did she have? Like, she can sense what people were thinking, or she could take information from people. She wasn't clear as to what it was because she was so resolute, right? She was so embedded. It was like, I don't know. Well, we're gonna torture you and find out what the truth is because I can't figure it out. So it really is a testament to her character. So she was definitely, probably, I would say, my favorite character, from this series. At least favorite new character, for sure. So, Riva comes up to the door, Obi-Wan comes up to the door, and they start to have this dialogue. And was it Anakin, or I mean, was it Obi-Wan that mentioned Anakin's name, or was it Riva? I think it was Obi-Wan, correct?
Yeah.
And
so.
it's like,
Yeah.
well, how did you know that? You were too young to know, right? And then they start to have this dialogue, and she goes into her backstory, which I think everyone kind of figured out by now that she was the youngling way back when, right? I mean, they kind of alluded to it all the way through, so that paid off. I thought that was a powerful scene. I'm glad they were able to. She's gotten better, I think, as the series has gone along. She was introduced really too aggressive to me, but then they started giving her some personality as it went along, even though the dialogue was pretty crude between her and Leia. But they were still building, and this was probably my favorite episode with Riva, with getting into her story and what drives her, and having 10 years of focusing and having that hatred to get into that position was really powerful. I know there's lots of different places you guys want to go with this. I'm going to start off with Doug this time. Doug, talk about that interaction with Obi-Wan and Riva.
Yeah, again, another really powerful moment to see Riva kind of like melt a little bit. Like some of her, I feel like her shields went down, her own blast shields, metaphorically speaking, if you will. But to see her
All right.
to harken back to when she was a kid, and then later on she gets another flashback. Like it's kind of chilling, and like you see the look in her eyes when she's remembering some of these things, and she seems just like the little kid. Like they captured that expression so well. So like that fear and trauma, like it's still very potent. So it's But I love that they added this complexity to her. I think that it makes her way more interesting. I mean, I do like her aggressive nature, but this makes me find her a lot more compelling. Um, and yeah, the way how the episode ends, yeah, I'm excited to get to that too.
And Rob, it helps that it explains why she's pissed at everyone, right? She's not just pissed at Vader, but she's pissed at Obi-Wan also. So
Oh,
it
yeah.
makes more sense now. It's
Yeah.
like, well, I'm really not on anyone's side. I'm trying to kill Vader, but I hate you too, Obi-Wan. So kind of go into that. That really
Well,
helped her character, I believe.
I mean, I think the whole scene, one, I believe it was the second, maybe late in the first episode we did, when you asked who we thought she was, and Doug had the call out that she was a youngling before anything.
Mm-hmm.
So hey, there's that. But I think the whole scene was powerful, just from the starting at the door when Obi-Wan says Anakin, and he stops and he thinks about it and goes, "You were a youngling." And she's like, "I was." And then to see the flashback of the scared kid, and to see the menacing Anakin from the prequels, from Revenge of the Sith, coming in to kill him, and all of it. I thought the whole scene was just done masterfully. And then to get to the end of the scene where she says, he did this and he killed them, and I hid under the bodies, and I was there when the bodies got cold. Where were you, Obi-Wan? Where were you? And he had zero answer for her. I mean, he's just there in silence, because it's like he was your Padawan, your student, and you couldn't stop him. Why couldn't you see this coming? And that is Obi-Wan's failing there. I mean, because if you look back at it, Obi-Wan, I mean, quite frankly, you went from having Qui-Gon Jinn as his master. Qui-Gon's gone. He's now has to deal with loss of his master. He's become a master because he's taken on Anakin as his Padawan. So he's learning to do his job and trying to learn to teach the Chosen One. Now, the Chosen One. Okay, so he's supposed to bring balance to the Force and everything else. And I've got to teach this kid. I can barely handle myself as more than a knight, let alone a master to teach him. Mm. And his greatest failing in the end is his arrogance and thinking that he taught Anakin enough, and he wasn't there.
Yeah, I wrote that quote down too, Rob, of when Reva says, "Where were you when he was killing my friends?" Right?
Yes.
I mean, I think that, because it's such a, that's kind of a trope, the stalling, right? Stall for time, but they're both like they're both trying to taunt each other and also pull information. So it's such a dance, and through the door, right, of them kind of going back and forth. And whenever someone, because Reva already says, if you're stalling for time, it won't work, right? And then that's when Obi-Wan goes through. So I could not agree more that it just is really, it's really intense. And Obi-Wan starts planting the seed of, we can take them together, right? Like he starts already figuring out, like, let me help you. He's trying to get whatever angle. And I thought it's fantastic. Really, this is the point. They're both on the other side of the door, and the door is like the light in the dark, right? It's like the barrier of like, and really how they are dealing with the theme of this show is, how are they dealing with trauma, right? And so you have Reva, who is on a quest for revenge, right? And has experienced this awful trauma, is now going to use that to fuel hate and try to get back. And you have Obi-Wan, who's trying to let go. And I think you can see them. That door is the stark divide of how each of them are handling these incredibly traumatic things that they've went through, right? And how you process that. And it's true, right? You can let the awful stuff in your life consume you and fuel you, right, to do all types of crazy, destructive things, or you can try to let it go. And both are equally difficult paths. And I think you just saw that in that one scene. It was such a great scene, because it encapsulated that whole dynamic just right there, and they're on that divide.
Go ahead, Rob.
Oh, I was just going to say, I mean, and to end that scene with, I know the part that both of you had to, or, that's when she cuts the door.
Yeah.
I mean, she ends it with cutting that door open. And when she cuts the door open, the sheer amount, I would say that if you start looking at force power and who has what, Reva may have some kind of force power. Obi-Wan shoved her halfway across that battlefield, like it was, you know what, watch this, and knocked over all the stormtroopers in the way like they were bowling pins. You know, and some of the things that I had been, you know, reading and checking, and actually a video I had watched about different force power is just, it really is how much of it you're in tune with. And the force power isn't your physical power, but it is a manifestation of that. And it, for him to manifest that much power at that time, and that puts into perspective how much more Vader manifests later on. You know.
So what do you think? Because, you know, he was still in his montage last episode, and now he can push her back, right? He was barely able to pull whatever that little metal thing is that he was dragging, and he kind of held the water back. But now all of a sudden he's General Kenobi now. At least it appears so. So what changed? Is it he just is accepting? Was there some switch that goes off in Obi-Wan where he's able to draw on the Force to that level?
I think his heart is now open. I think he's now accepted that call. Like, he's become a leader again and someone who's trying to save these people and do good. And I think he's not closing that part off of him and his nature. So I think because of that, he's more open to the Force flowing through him. And I think he's got this mission here. And I think he's feeling the weight of these people. It's a very intense situation. But instead of just trying to sneak out of there with Leia, you know, he could do something selfish like that, but he's making a stand. And I think that's why he's so powerful. That's my take, at least.
All right, I like that.
Yeah, I agree. I think in that same the doorway conversation, Reva even asked, "Do you even want Vader dead?" Right? And I think Obi-Wan, it's this acceptance of, no, I don't, but I'm not the one to kill him, right? And I need to accept that Vader's going to do what he's going to do, right, until, you know, Luke can train up and then finally, you know, take on Vader. So I agree. And I think it's this acceptance of the general piece and of his place and his part. And so all of that, this accepted, right? The more that he's dealing with the horrors of what he had to go through, and now processing his new place, he is becoming more powerful. So I think all of that is channeling why he was able to do such a strong Force push.
I would agree in part with some of those things, although I think that Obi-Wan makes the distinguishment because she asked, "Do you want Anakin dead?" And Obi-Wan himself distinguishes the difference between Anakin and Vader. Okay, because they are not the same person to him in his head. But Anakin was his brother. Vader's a bad guy. I mean, Vader's just evil, a Sith Lord, and I don't think he's got that reconciled in his head. But I think, like as you were saying, Matt, I think as this is built, I mean, and it's built through the episodes. You know, last episode barely moving a thing around. He's becoming more accepting of his role, of what he's here to do, and he's opened himself up more to the Force. And now you put him in this situation on Jabim where these people need saving. And I literally am the guy that can do this. And I've reconciled myself with these traumas, and I'm going to help these people. So I think that all adds up to that happening at that point.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, it's a good point, Rob.
When he has to, right? I mean, they're trapped. So if he doesn't, it's on him at this point. And she still doesn't believe him. Even after the conversation, it's like, you know, I've been alone and you don't know what I've done alone. And then she cuts through, right? So she's still like, I'll give Vader my own way. I'm coming for you. So she cuts through the door. The fight, you know, ensues. Somewhat of a decent fight. I don't know why what's his name was standing in the front with a bowcaster with no shielding at all. You know, it's like, let me jump in front.
This is again back to my point. You have this one of the best scenes in the series, and then we get this battle where no one is even taking cover. Like, I guess some of the rebels have shields, but how many of them are just standing, not even attempting to have? So I thought, compared to some of the fight scenes that we've seen, in Rogue One, I thought the action in Rogue One, the actual battle scenes were just phenomenal. And then in Clone Wars and Rebels, they're very kinetic. In the prequels, this reminded me, I guess, a little bit of some of the original, series kind of stormtroopers where they kind of, but to have the Rebel, I just feel like that whole hallway scene, like they weren't taking cover. They weren't, it was just very kind of out in the open. And I just didn't feel like that scene was fast, and it was impactful emotionally. And we'll talk about that in a second. And I thought, again, the emotion was done well, but yes, I thought it was really, really, really clunky. And then how the stormtroopers are just running straight at Obi-Wan, right? Or like, I just feel like they're just like like bees or something. They're just swarming to their doom. I've just felt the action here was very lackluster.
Doug, I mean, could they have just put a few, bulkheads so they can shoot behind them and they can still get hit with a lucky shot? They are stormtroopers, but just to stand out in the open like 10 feet away is like, come on, man.
It was a little strange. And I mean, again, I'm like, I can be pretty forgiving. I thought of like, this is like the original trilogy where the stormtroopers are kind of just walking around and they're getting hit and falling on the ground. And so I'm like, okay, I've seen this type of fighting before. And it's, again, I like to see Obi-Wan, batting lasers back at the stormtroopers. That's pretty cool. But yeah, it wasn't the best. But I think it led to one of my most favorite moments of the episode, one of the most emotional ones in that hallway.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, nobody could hide. You're both correct. It reminded me of, let's go back to New Hope. Okay, we're all in this giant Death Star. Nobody could ever possibly come get us. I mean, all the way through to Return of the Jedi. What? They're just teddy bears. They can't take us down. Right? I mean, so, it did remind me of that, because it's like, we have more numbers, so we're just going to keep throwing bodies at you. And the Rebels, well, I understand that you're going into a narrowing hallway, so there's less of you to hit, but that doesn't mean you don't need to take cover. You should try to find some kind of cover. So I agree that was, as Matt's been saying, there were some up and down moments, and that was one of the down ones. Was it cool to see Obi-Wan batting the bolts back and standing most of them off? Yeah. And could I suspend most of it when they got to the part where it was narrowed down? Okay, Obi-Wan could hold that point for as long as he wants to with the Force. Keep shooting at him. He'll keep just hitting blaster bolts back at you, because we've seen countless Jedis do it countless times, But overall, not a good scene. But it did lead to some incredible stuff.
Yeah, well, it was really emotional to see, Tala takes a shot, the robot goes down. He went down pretty easy, I thought, but okay. He seemed pretty powerful. That was great. And then she sacrificed. Well, I guess she was going to die anyway, so she might as well explode the grenade and kill herself. So, like I said, she's my favorite new character. Yeah. That is no longer a character because she's gone, unfortunately. That's what Marvel does with their villains, right? They kill them off. It's like, great.
Yeah, I think Ned B was a great droid, and I think I've talked about on previous episode. The droids are the true hero, right? Him just shielding Tala so that she could pull out the thermal detonator. Like, I feel like I was getting emotional watching. I think it's Ned B was the name of the droid, and I love Ned B's punch that the stormtrooper just went flying. Like, and it makes total loader droids have to be pretty strong, right? Like, I love Ned B standing out in the open. I'm fine with, because they're kind of droids, right? He's just kind of blasting away. So I love the Ned B kind of hallway scene, and I think I know, kind of Doug, to your point too. Like, the stormtroopers are charging in, so they kind of have to go without cover, right? When you're kind of charging into a room. So, and I feel like after that, when it kind of funneled to the smaller hallway and Tala's scene, it got a little better, right? Because they're kind of now out of that kind of main chamber, but yeah. And I'm curious too, the thermal detonator, because when Leia pulls out the thermal detonator, right, to threaten Jabba, everyone freaks out, and you kind of just assume that it's a grenade. But I feel like this really pays off, right? What a thermal. I don't know if there's been. I think in the Clone Wars and Rebels, there maybe been some thermal detonators, but not in live action have we seen, what a thermal detonator does. Is that your guys? I'm curious if you can think of any live action thermal detonations.
No, I haven't seen any thermal detonators that I can think of in live action. And I mean, in just the sheer threat of Leia to use it in Jabba's palace, I mean, everybody in that place is like, oh, no, please, wait a minute. So that should pretty much, it was implied this thing's going to devastate, and it didn't disappoint. It did what was advertised.
Yeah, the look on Tala's face when she's looking up at Ned B and she's like seeing her droid friend dying and she's realizing she's about to die, like that got me. And I felt so bad for her, and Obi-Wan's there trying to get her, and I was hoping maybe there'd be some romantic relationship. I don't know. I was expecting more adventures with Tala, and I just wished Obi-Wan could have like used the Force to like drag her, or like I don't know.
Can Jedi do that? Can they pull things to them as well as push away?
Yeah, they can. Yes. And why not pull Tala and then throw the grenade back in?
Well, Obi-Wan's never meant to be happy.
Yeah.
I mean, every time he gets close to anybody that he thinks he might like, they're dead.
Then my thought was like, well, maybe it was a flashbang and she's really alive and she'll come back. But upon second viewing, there's definitely flames.
There might be burnt stormtroopers in the next scene too. So,
You are definitely a glass half full guy. I appreciate that. Like maybe it was a flashbang. So, the part that got me, after, that happens, they have the dialogue and Obi-Wan's like, look, I got to protect. I'm going to give myself up. I couldn't understand the gambit. But at the same time, they showed another flashback with him and Anakin fighting. And so it's starting to let you know the strategy, right? Obi-Wan has a plan now, and he's ready. He's resolute, as you guys were alluding to earlier. I thought it was weird to give up his saber, but I guess maybe that's what he had to do. So he goes in and he surrenders to Reva, and she says, I'm bringing Vader to you, right? Or Vader's coming. And he's like, no, I'm bringing Vader for you. That's my plan. And he starts to kind of give her that strategy. So I love, from the beginning how they had all that prequel footage and showing the lessons that were being taught and how they both think and the strategy of it. And he's like, okay, I'm going to use his anger and how he thinks against him in this way and plan. He doesn't know, hopefully, that Reva is against him, and it's not going to be me that's going to strike him down. It's going to be Reva from behind. So jump into that, Matt. Let's start with you this time.
Yeah, I think I know I got a lot of my gripes out of the way. I think this was I just love this so much. It was so in line with Obi-Wan. Obi-Wan's not the most powerful Jedi, but he's kind of like Odysseus, right? He's so wise. He's like the fox, right? He's always thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead, and so he also he figures out too. I need to stall more time, right? So that they can get the doors open and get everyone loaded up. And so he's like, and there's more than one ways to fight, right? Which is such a theme, where it calls back later to, to Luke and how Luke defeats Vader. And we'll talk a little bit more of that with Reva. But he's like, yeah, I can't on my own, just with my own power. So I'm going to get another ledge up, and I'm going to figure out how to activate Reva as one of an agent. And so that's what came to mind for me of a really powerful way of kind of non-violently, right? How am I going to get out of this situation? Right. And he's always like, what angle can I play? And you're right. And then, cause he has now kind of figured out right through that connection through the doorway, right? He knows Reva's angle. He's kind of sensing where she's at. And he can sense that thirst for revenge. And so I think he's like, how can I take advantage of this? Is that the way you read it, Rob and Doug?
Yeah, in ways that is the way I read it. And I mean, it is the theme of being able to fight without the weapons, leaving the weapons behind, and telling them that.
Yeah.
And then I mean, and as you alluded to, he you know makes that illusion in A New Hope. He also makes the same statement in the flashback when he's fighting with Anakin. He gives Anakin that lesson. I don't need a weapon to beat you. I don't need one to fight you. I can fight you in other ways. So, there's all that. And then there's the other part that we've kind of glossed over in all this, Leia being put into the little tunnel to fix the doors and stuff. I mean, there's the like telling them, when they're like, you got to be kidding me. We're not going to put her on a ladder. And he's like, no, you trust me, right? I trust her. And then part of it with her and being little, because I was just talking with Stephanie about this literally while we were watching it the second time. And I'm like, think of her mechanical adeptness. I mean, and you go, oh, she gets that from Anakin. And you see so many different traits in her that you see in Anakin as you're going through this, with the impulsiveness, with the, with all the things you've seen in Anakin in the Clone Wars and all that. And then you see, with, okay, I'm going to go in here. I have the love of the droid. Well, Anakin built 3PO. So, and he worked on pod racers and he did these things. These are things that he did with his hands that he loved. And I think she gets that from him, So I think that her scenes, putting her in there and showing that she can do some things to help out with this too. I thought that was great. I think that with Obi-Wan going out and surrendering to Reva like that, and and he comes out with his hands up and they're all of a sudden putting cuffs on him, and I'm like, really? Come on. With a thought, those cuffs go away. Literally with a thought, I can go click, click, they're gone. You only have me cuffed because I want to be. And, when he gets out there with her, and I thought that was him starting and playing the mind games to make her the agent, as you were saying. No, you're not bringing, Vader's not coming here for me.
Yeah.
I'm bringing him for you. Yeah, because I know what you want, so I'm delivering what you want. So I'm doing my half, so do your half.
Rob, that's fantastic. I didn't even think about Anakin's mechanical, mind being passed down to Leia. That's such a good point. And it's almost like Leia probably has more Anakin and Luke probably has more Padme traits.
That is what I would say. That is, honestly, that's what it seems like to me also.
Yeah. That's great.
Excellent observation. Doug?
Boy, I'm just learning from you all. This is brings it to new depths for me. I love that Star Wars and the Jedi have this, they know when to put down a weapon. They know that weapons aren't always the answer. And so when Obi-Wan left it, I was like, oh, hell yeah, this is awesome. I love this. Like, I found that to be really impactful for me. The Leia stuff, yeah, I kind of brushed off as, okay, it's kind of corny. She is only 10. You want to send her into the rafters, and there's a lot of wires in there. Like, how is she really gonna know? Like, it'd be hard. But hearing Rob, you describe it, and like the connections to Anakin again, it makes it so much more layered and complex and beautiful and ultimately tragic to think that her dad is coming to like kill all these people and she has no clue. Yeah.
My only part with the particular MacGuffin is she's in there and her droid happens to come up and it's like, oh, look at this little piece sticking out. I pulled this off, everything's well, and now it can help me cut this thing. And it's like, okay, well, MacGuffins have to happen, so it is what it is.
There is
that was an easy fix.
She needs something to do this episode, right? Like,
it's not an escort mission. She was useful for something, so that's great. But I do like Rob's perspective on that. It did make me appreciate it a little bit more when I go to rewatch it, to not, just have so much disdain for the escort mission that was Leia during
Mhm.
this whole thing. I mean, there were some good pieces, but okay, man.
Yeah.
But now Riva and Obi-Wan are having that conversation. He's on his knees.
Mhm.
One of the last few things, there's like two more things that kind of I can nitpick about. One, they're having this conversation about turning on Vader with stormtroopers about 5 feet away, right? And it's like, so how do they not hear what's going on, right? But
Earmuffs.
their helmets, right?
That's right.
I think it implies they're like kind of whispering, right? Because I think her tone drops. So I think they're trying to keep it under their breath. Also, I think the stormtroopers have like really no idea about the inner workings of the Inquisitors, or so like I'm sure a lot of it's just nonsense to them, right? Like they're grunts. They don't know anything about what's happening.
Wow,
Gibberish.
wow.
It's all
Well, he still
Yep.
he still has to convince her in that space, right? She's still not convinced. And so he's like, no, I'm bringing, him to you so that you can
yeah.
finish it. And so I think she finally is like, okay, I'm in. Let's go ahead and do this. Vader has his nice walk and he's coming on down. We get Leia who pulls, and I'm kind of looking at the episode a little bit so I can stay on track. So I just watched her pick the thing up. I love Vader's walk. I don't know who's in
Yeah.
the suit, but watching him walk through the cave with his
Yeah.
cape flowing, it's just he's so menacing, and it's like, man, it's on now. I don't know what's gonna happen in this space. Thinking about the episode to that point, having not watched it, it's like, okay, Obi-Wan's on his knees, Reva's standing there, and Vader's coming, right? And they haven't taken off yet, and it's like, holy crap, man, how is this gonna play out? And he doesn't have his weapon. So I love that tension there, and the suspense. Like, okay, it's on now. I even paused to see how much time was left in the episode because I'm like, all right, man, how much yum yum am I gonna get here? 'Cause I want this to be fantastic. So Roken and everyone, they get onto the transport and they're getting ready to go. And Vader comes in. Now, here's what I was not clear on, right? So Riva has Obi-Wan on his knees with a bunch of stormtroopers. Vader comes in to the cave and he comes and he approaches the ships before he approaches Obi-Wan and Riva. So wouldn't he have walked past them first? Like I was a little confused on that.
There's a small scene where Riva sends Obi-Wan back inside with handcuffs, and I think it's implied that Obi-Wan is, because the first scene, because when Vader lands, Riva says Vader's inside, or I mean Riva says Obi-Wan's inside, and then there's more dead stormtroopers, so I think it's implied that Obi-Wan took them out. I'm curious, Doug and Rob, my take on that was Riva agreeing to use Obi-Wan as a distraction, right? Like she knew that the stormtroopers would be overtaken, so she sends him inside with a minimal guard, and then she's going to send Vader in to be distracted with Obi-Wan right now loose, and then she's going to sneak up. But I'm curious if you guys had a different take on that.
No, that was the take I had on it. I mean, that she sent him in there with the bare minimum of a guard so that his escape was ensured, just in case. And then he was the distraction that because I mean, she was coming for Vader and head on in combat, not so much. Maybe with a backstab, okay, maybe.
But you know what? That's a gambit in itself, right? I mean, she knows the penalty for failure. So to be so stupid to lock him up with a bunch of stormtroopers, knowing that he could easily break free. I know that you got to have a plan. Didn't say it was a great plan, but it's a plan. And the fact that she thinks that she can take Vader, it just kind of speaks to her anger and her hubris, right? That however you think this is going to happen, you've got a fair shot of taking him out in this moment. My last nitpick, and Doug, build on what we were just talking about, and then the scene where it looks cool to have Vader pull the ship back. I mean, that it looks good on camera. I just wasn't really sold at the fact that he would be duped into pulling down the dummy ship and not the smaller ship that then takes off and gets away, right? or why he couldn't just put his hand back out, use the Force, and pull that one too. So talk about that piece, because I think that was my last issue with this episode. Well, there's one more.
Oh, yeah, actually, I have a couple issues too. And Marwan, I agree with you. Marwan. I was really confused about Obi-Wan being with Reva, and then he was released, and then Vader landed and talked to Reva. Like, yeah, I thought that could have been executed better.
Yeah,
But I did like seeing. I mean, Vader is angry. He's like, "Oh, I'm gonna get Obi-Wan now. I'm pumped. I'm so pissed." So I can see in his anger that his mind is clouded, and he'll just grab and force grab whatever ship he sees flying away first, and he's just ripping that thing to shreds with the Force. So he's
badass.
Yeah, it was badass.
Yeah,
but he wasn't in a clear mind state. So I think it was really clever, and I liked it. And I like to see that we're getting more of those intense Force abilities shown in the live action. I thought it was pretty cool.
Mm-hmm.
My take, Marwan, to answer your second question is why he didn't go after the other. One, it's a little farther away, but two, it does take, even Vader has limits, and it takes a lot of Force energy to pull down a ship, right? So I think to do that back to back, I think would be pretty tough. It's even implied Yoda lifting the X-Wing is using a lot of Force energy, right? So like doing big acts of the Force, I think, is draining on a Jedi. Even someone as powerful as Vader. And also, it wasn't just Vader. Vader brought the ship down and then was ripping open, right? And I think that implies, he's so focused, right? And that's his undoing, right? Is he's so focused on victory and power, using power to achieve victory at all costs, that he's not considering all the other angles. And so then that ship is just out of reach, and he doesn't even sense, that might be part of the play. He's just, all rage all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Rob, jump in there.
I think the scene was awesome. I mean, just to watch him just rip the ship down and shred it, I thought was incredibly good. I also think that it is hugely draining on him to use that much Force power at any given point, which then, Obi-Wan knows this. He knows that he's going to go into a fit, and he's going to go into, even as Anakin, it was aggressive. So he knows that it's going to be aggressive. He just probably does not anticipate the level of rage that went with it, So, and the rage is what I have no doubt fueled Vader even more to do it. Yeah. The only other thing I would say about the ship that was escaping, Reva made her move right then. Mm-hmm. So if he's already directed himself to stop that, I don't think he can separate the two, because now he's got another fight on his hands that's right there and imminent.
Yeah.
So you think he sensed her? So, well, let me frame it, and then I'll ask that. You can answer that question first, right? So I just rewatched the scene, and I'm watching it with captions on. And as Vader's pulling the ship down, it says, he's doing it while he's training, right? So what's so great about you guys that are so deep in Star Wars lore and fandom is that you can explain these things, right? Because to a casual viewer, even though I love this stuff, I'm just not that deep in it. It doesn't necessarily make sense to me. So it's like, well, why does he just do the next ship, and tear that one down? So watching it over and listening to your explanation, it's like, oh, okay, yeah, he would. It might take a minute before he's able to do that level of Force power again, and now they're gone. And then it immediately cuts to the last scene of them fighting during the prequels, which was great because it showed the lesson on, I don't need a weapon to win, and this is how I'm going to beat you. Now I'm gone. That he can sense that Obi-Wan is in the ship, and he gets away, which really, it's got to infuriate him. And then here comes Reva. So whether or not he knew Reva was coming behind with nefarious, thoughts, or see, this is how I viewed Vader, was at that point, he already knew Reva had turned, right? Because the Grand Inquisitor ends up coming in and everything else after it's all said and done. So he learned the lesson. He didn't learn the whole lesson because he still got duped by the master, but he knew enough he's learned enough to play the long game with Reva. So I'm just going to use her as a pawn to get next to Obi-Wan. So, you can see I've won up to you, but at the same time, no. I have learned from my master, and now I have tricked you, and this is how I got this close to you. So, Doug, speak to that. We'll go Doug, Rob, and then Matt.
Boy, I like how you unpacked that, Marwan, because I interpreted it the first time as Vader failed. He didn't learn the lesson at all. And I felt like the introduction of the Grand Inquisitor again, I felt was a little clunky. And so Vader knew this the whole time. I'm trying to think of that is the long game. That is really impressive that he knew all that. But
well, let me say this, Doug. So my thought on that was my glass half full was he doesn't know who's a spy or who's a traitor. And so it's his way to, hey, you know what? I'm gonna play this out and see if it's just Reva or if there's someone else. So that was my thought on it. That's how I interpreted it.
I like that. I like that perspective. I didn't think of that the first time, and I like the encounter between Reva and Vader. I love to see Vader do these little force moves, and you could really recut that and put some dance music behind it. Make some pretty cool dancing Vader videos. But yeah. But my one gripe, it's so he stabs Reva just like how he did when she was a kid, which was actually really powerful and sad. But then what is it with them not killing characters? You walk through a town, Vader, and just killing random people, and you won't kill someone who just betrayed you like this. So
what the story calls for.
Yeah, I know. Just I'm glad she's not dead. I want to see her come back in some way, but it just seemed a little silly at the time.
Matt, jump in there.
Well, Rob, did you want to go first before me?
Sure. I think that the fight scene with Reva and Vader, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every last minute of it. I thought that it was a good fight scene. It literally, he showed her, look, you mean nothing to me. You are nothing. We're in a fight, and I'm not even going to draw my lightsaber whatsoever. I am going to move you around with my hands, and I'm going to back and forth, and you will never hit me. And then, you know what? I'm going to take your weapon away from you. I'm going to break it in half. I'm going to let you have half of it back. Oh, watch. I just put part of it away, and then I took yours and the part I put away and had both of them, and now I'm going to kill you. I mean, I literally am going to humiliate you in every way, shape, or form that I can. And then you're so far beneath me, I'm going to call you a youngling, and I'm not even going to kill you. I'm just going to leave you here where I found you, in the dirt, and tell you that I saw this coming the whole time. I knew who you were on day one when you came in, and the real Grand Inquisitor right here, been fueled by rage the whole time. That in a back to tank. He's back in business. So canon is complete. He's going to be around for Rebels,
Wished he could have come back with a skinnier head. That's my
maybe that's in a future update. But as for not killing her, I would wonder if there's a difference in power in lightsabers. I mean, to some level, because I mean, if Vader's using his own saber, I don't doubt that it goes through her all the way. But is Reva's saber, and I asked this as a question, and I also posit it because if you look at Kylo Ren's saber, he has a cracked crystal, and his saber is rigid and it's not right. It's not, like Luke's or even Vader's. So is there a varying degree of power depending on how powerful you actually are in the Force or how you learn to create your lightsaber? Because I would imagine with the Inquisitors, they're not taught the full ways that the Sith would be to create a lightsaber. So
Okay,
I would
Rob,
wonder.
I'm hearing you, but at the same time, she did cut down the steel door or whatever that door was made out of. And
Yeah,
I'm watching
laser
the
and
scene
metal, that's a different story. This is
now.
we're
He
suspending different
impales her.
beliefs here, Marwan.
I mean, I'm watching it now. He impales her. You know what I
I
mean?
know. Yeah.
And it's red hot. So it almost seems like no matter where it hits her, and she's human, right? I mean,
Yeah.
all that up in there is gone. Matt, jump in there. This is getting ridiculous.
I'm just asking the question.
I was trying to Google real quick because I do think there's a line somewhere where the kyber crystals that power the Jedi's lightsaber do somehow channel the Force. So I think, Rob, you might be on some. I don't know exactly how it works because other people can pick up lightsabers and they're still powerful. So it's not like a one for one, like the more powerful the Jedi, the more powerful their lightsaber. But I do think there's some loose connection there. Yeah, I'm with you, Doug. Of why they continue to stab people and then just leave them. It seems like an awkward thing, right? To not like kill Riva. I did interpret it. The line from the Grand Inquisitor kind of explained, like, we're not even going to kill you because you're not even worth it. It's like the ultimate humiliation. So I can kind of, all right, I'll get on board with that, right? Is like she's so beneath them at this point, right? Is that they're just gonna leave her there. So that's kind of and I think that's, Rob, what you were saying. And so I agree with that kind of perspective. I thought they even flashed back quickly, right? Before Vader and I think, Doug, you were kind of mentioning this, right? Before Vader stabs her, she sees like Anakin, right? So it's this crazy kind of flashback. And I think, again, back to this trauma, she's just a traumatized little girl, and the path of revenge ultimately consumed her, right? It killed her, and you can't beat Vader with revenge, right? Vader will out revenge you or out hate you. The only way to beat Vader is what Luke did: forgive, the Jedi path, right? You beat Vader by forgiving him, and I think that's really what you can clearly tell Deborah Chow thematically is right in line with where the universe is with the treatment of Vader. So I was somewhat okay with the leaving her there with that logic of it, although albeit a little bit clunky. But I do think, back to what you were saying, Rob, is the Vader just toying with her was, I think Vader was done right from start to finish this episode. I think Deborah Chow just nailed Vader from his very first line when Riva comes in and says, "It's an honor to be here," and Vader just turns like, "I'm not interested in civilities," right? Like, I mean, it's just like a great opening line. Like, that's exactly what Vader would say, right? Now, the part I'll quibble with you is I don't know if they're implying that Vader foresaw, like, I don't know if it was like a Force vision, like what Anakin got when he foresaw Padme's death. Maybe they're implying that. I almost took it as Vader just distrusts everyone at this point. Like, Vader won't let anyone get close, right? So he's going to suspect anyone, and that's why he doesn't care about the Inquisitors, right? He doesn't really have any emotional attachments other than to his rage and thirst for vengeance. So I don't know. Did you guys interpret that as an actual Force vision that Vader foresaw Riva turning on him?
No, I didn't see it as a Force vision. I saw it as, because the Grand Inquisitor was already on the ground, right? When Vader first came, he was by himself. Then the Grand Inquisitor is there. So, I mean, obviously things happen, in between minutes of the fight. But I think it really was the long game. And the Grand Inquisitor made a comment. He says, your rage was useful. Now it has grown tiresome. And so I think they were in on it for, the duration. It's like, all right, you go ahead and heal up. We'll keep you dead for now. It's useful. We'll use her to track Obi-Wan, and we'll get what we can get. And now it's like, yeah, you're done. That was my thought. Doug, go ahead. Yeah. I cut you off there.
No, yeah, I agree with you. But I do think the Grand Inquisitor, it's not just the head, it's his voice. Did anybody else get a little annoyed by his voice? It's like, oh, revenge is best served cold, Riva. Wouldn't you agree? Now I'll take your little pin. Thank you. Like, it's so the voice is like it's like a little too nasally or something,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
so
it
it's a
didn't
little
bother
off.
me in Rebels. I feel like they needed to be more like it was in Rebels, the Grand
I know this,
Inquisitor.
yeah. I know this actor really tried to avoid copying that character and make it his own, but I kind of wish he would have played into it more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and this is where I think again I talked a little earlier on the podcast of like this is I think where the reluctance to go to some of the CGI. I think it would have made way more sense to have Cad Bane was the same way and Boba Fett of like some of these characters that they brought into live action. And I love them bringing these Clone Wars characters into live action or Rebels characters, but sometimes you need some CGI. Like the Grand Inquisitor is Utapawan, and all the Utapawans in Revenge of the Sith all have the thin, long heads and look like the Grand Inquisitor looks like in Rebels. And so so it's interesting, Doug, that the actor is trying to make it his own. But I feel like for the continuity and I think that was a kind of a clunky. And the scene again we had more flashbacks of the night when Anakin and the 501st took over the Jedi Temple, and seeing the live action clone troopers is just something about it. I wish for the CGI. I think it would have looked better with the CGI clone troopers. I don't. I think it looked weird, or I don't know, made it look cheaper or something, or it just kind of took me out of it. Especially because I was watching some other actual footage of Revenge of the Sith, and the CGI clone troopers are not. I don't know. It's not bad. I know everyone hated them, but I don't think they look that terrible compared to what we have now. Of actually now they've granted everyone's wish and have the live action clone troopers. But I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Do you think those scenes were clunky with the clone troopers, or do you have a problem with that, Rob and Doug?
No. Not so much.
We're alone on that.
No, I'm going to bow out. You can have the problem with it. I'm good.
All right,
Fair
so
enough.
we get left with a cliffhanger, right? Reva is not killed, which is bizarre, but okay, it happens. And not only that, she finds the recorder and listens to Ball saying, "Hey, I'm gonna head to Tatooine and check on Luke," which is crazy. And you can see she's feeling betrayed by Obi-Wan again, right? Like, you use me to get away. I couldn't be Vader, right? I'm recognizing my own hubris now. He knew the plan the whole time, and you've abandoned me again. So you've left me here to die. So who knows how this episode is gonna end? But I still would like to see, now that the Grand Inquisitor is healthy, I love to see him fight. I love to see what is that, fifth brother fight, which he hasn't done anything this whole time, right? And we still have to get one more battle with Obi-Wan and Vader. So there's a lot that I want to see in this last episode. Go ahead, Matt.
I don't know if they're gonna do it. That was my worry of how they ended it. I don't know if we're gonna get a Vader and Obi-Wan rematch, and I'll be so disappointed. But I think the way the arc is going is Reva's going to go to Tatooine. If you look on the Disney Plus poster if you go to the Obi-Wan show page, the poster is Obi-Wan in the desert facing off against what it looks like an Inquisitor. So my guess is that is Reva coming to get revenge, and Obi-Wan's going to defend on Tatooine. And so I don't know if we're going to get. Because I mean, how would at this point Obi-Wan? How would the Empire find? I mean, of course it could happen. There's all types of story ways you could do it, but I'm worried they're not going that way, and I'm worried we're only going to get the only lightsaber battle we're going to get is Reva and Obi-Wan, based on how the arc is kind of set up. But I don't know. Hopefully not. But that's my worry.
Doug, who wants that? We've already seen her fight. We haven't even seen fifth brother fight at all. Like, seriously? Can we get a different battle?
I know. I'm with you, Marwan. I would love to see a different battle. I still want to see more Vader and Obi-Wan, but I mean, it does make sense that I could see this being the last encounter between Obi-Wan and Vader. Maybe they don't want to go too. I mean, this was a pretty great encounter. This little like strategy battle between them. Even though they didn't really face each other physically, they're playing against each other, which was kind of neat. But yeah, I would love to see a lightsaber battle. I could see there maybe being like an epilogue of Obi-Wan returning to Tatooine, and there he is, and there's Reva, and he has to fight her, but maybe he grants her mercy or something. And I still have hope that she'll turn to the light side. I don't know why. I still believe that, but I thought maybe after her being stabbed by Vader, she would see the light and then join Obi-Wan. That does not seem to be her intentions at the end of this episode.
She looks pretty pissed.
Trouble. But I have hope for her. I'm glass half full on Reva.
Yeah.
So Rob, my hope is, if we don't get a fight with Vader and Obi-Wan, that's because we get a season 2, right? And they drag it out and they let us know so we're not pissed. And there's like a Star Wars revolt, and it's like, all right, in season 2, you'll see the battle. Maybe we get, General Kenobi's back, and he fights the Grand Inquisitor and Fifth Brother, and is able to hold them off, or maybe kill Fifth Brother, but not the Grand Inquisitor since he's still alive later on. I think that would be a fantastic end. And then they say, hey, season 2 coming, and then we know we're going to get another battle with Vader. So what are your thoughts there?
I would say that, one, I don't think they can wrap up everything they've got in the next episode unless they give us something more than 39 minutes. Okay? I mean, because if you wrap it up in 39 minutes, I'm just going to be like, what? Why? Okay. I think that to wrap up all the story you have, one, they'd have to figure out a way. Ewan McGregor said that he'd love to play it again. He's made that statement.
Mm-hmm.
So if you can find the way and you can tell the story, or maybe they've found the way and they're not telling us until we get to the end of it. But this arc doesn't feel to me like they're going to play out the rest of the story in the next episode. That there's just no real human possible way. So I do hold out the hope for a second season. And as to Doug, I honestly would love to see Reva redeem herself. Do I think she's going to? I think there's going to be rage, and I think there's going to be anger. But maybe in the end, she does redeem herself. Maybe there's something there with Obi-Wan and seeing Luke. I don't know. And maybe she's irredeemable. To see Vader fight, yeah. I'd like to see the Grand Inquisitor and Vader both get a shot at Obi-Wan. We know the Grand Inquisitor isn't going to die, and we know Vader's not going to die. But we also know Obi-Wan's not going to die. That doesn't mean it couldn't be an epic battle.
Mm-hmm.
And Fifth Brother can't die either. Fifth Brother's in Rebels as well. So
yes.
Those are all untouchable unless
Reva's really the only touchable.
There's that one other female alien Inquisitor that was in the earlier episodes, right? She had like an orange skin.
Yeah.
There was Rebels. I think she is in Rebels. I think she's also a Rebels because there's I don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure she's also. I looked it up, and she's she's in a few Rebels episodes, or she's in the I think Twilight of the Apprentice arc where Maul kills Fifth Brother and her in the in that arc. So I think that's when they die in the canon is on that planet. Rob, do you remember what that planet's called, or Doug? That the Twilight of the Apprentice episode.
I can't remember. Not this moment.
Okay. No, not off the top of my head. I'm sorry, man.
No, either way. So I think all those Inquisitors are actually, besides Reva, are canonly safe in this arc. Now, here's my. I've got a lot of hope for season 2, and I think there's rumors about it. My dad sent us. He was like, "Oh, it's confirmed," and he all of us got really excited. But then we like, "Dad, did you fact check that?" Because I was like looking, and no, it was a rumor. It was a rumor. It was a website. So I know all that to say is there's a lot of rumors flying around right now about this. About the season 2. But here's my thing. So Hayden Hayden Christensen, part of the reason they got him back, because he didn't, I read some rumors that he didn't want to come back if he was just going to be behind the suit, is they got him to come back because they're going to do more than even just this flashback. Is I think there's rumors that part of his contract for coming back is going to be either flashback or part of multiple projects, not just Obi-Wan. So there's rumors that there's going to be a flashback in the Ahsoka series of him and a young Ahsoka. But also, I wouldn't be surprised if that he left the contract open for a season 2 of Obi-Wan. So that's my optimistic side. My pessimistic side is Rebels. Dave Filoni talked about this when he did, because Vader was only in one season of Rebels, right? Season 2. And the reason they didn't do more Vader, and that was fantastic Vader, right? The Ahsoka versus Vader fight on Twilight the Apprentice that I've referenced multiple times was an amazing, amazing piece of Star Wars. But Filoni talked about, and I do think it's a good point, is you can't have Vader get beat season after season, because then Vader loses the Vader aura, right? So that's what I worry about. Some of the story group cautioning of bringing Vader back. Maybe they do a season 2, but I don't know if we're going to get like a full-on Vader confrontation like we did this time, because it's like, yeah, is Obi-Wan just going to keep giving Vader the slip, right? Season after season. That starts to kind of feel a little stale, and also kind of, Vader's not going to get tricked over and over and over again. So that's my one pessimist of maybe why they wouldn't do another season, or at least not do another season with Vader. But I want it so much, because I think there's been so much overall this season. There's been some clunky parts, but overall, I think there's been some good Star Wars, and I'm really glad they did it. But I don't want to get my hopes too high.
So why don't we do this? Next week is the series finale right now, because there is no season 2 that's been announced yet. So we'll go ahead and we will review the last episode, and then come next week ready to talk about what you would want to see the direction of season 2 to go in, and let's share that with each other in the audience, and just kind of bring our wish list to bear and see what happens. And who knows, maybe in this next week they'll give us a little surprise, or we'll get the end credit scene where it says, you will see Obi-Wan again in Obi-Wan Book 2 or something like that. So let's speculate and kind of bring our best hopes and dreams for some more Obi-Wan and where it can go. I've got some things I'm trying to bite my tongue and not, shout some stuff out that would actually have to do with Leia, surprisingly. So I will save that for next week. Let's see Doug, you get the final word tonight. Last thoughts on the episode. We missed you last week, so you get the final one tonight.
Oh my! My favorite quote from the episode. The Inquisitor.
Your dad's quote in there, Matt?
Oh, wait. My son just threw me. Matt's dad coming in. He's got the last word tonight, folks.
I'm sorry, Dad. I know, just a day after Father's Day, and I threw him under the bus.
No.
Well, happy Father's Day.
Happy Father's Day. Oh, my gosh.
I mean, Star Wars is all
Dad.
about this father-son, conflict. So this actually fits in with Star Wars quite well.
Matt, I am your father.
Sorry, Dad. Thanks for watching. And a positive shout out to my dad is why I originally started getting into Star Wars is my dad had the old VHS tapes. And when we were really young, that's what we would do together. We watched a lot of Star Wars when there was a time that the only Star Wars media, right, was the episode 4, 5, and 6. And we would just rewatch those over and over again as kids. So thank you, Dad, for introducing, even though I threw you under the bus this episode, but thanks for introducing me to Star Wars.
Whoa.
Nice.
Where's that been?
Oh, it's the new soundboard, Doug.
Oh, cool. I like it.
Yes, may the force be with you too. So go ahead, Doug. Take us out.
All right. Well, it's been a pleasure. I mean, I feel like I love these things because I learn so much from each of you, and your different perspectives make me enjoy the episodes even more. So it's an honor to be here, and thank you, Marwan, for always being such a great facilitator and host. And I want to see more. I want to see you do the whole episode next time in the Darth Vader voice.
Oh, the whole episode in the Darth Vader voice?
I'm just kidding on that part.
Or if you don't, he will annihilate.
Now it is by your command.
Nice.
Now he's a Cylon, right? I mean,
Yeah.
All right, everyone. Well, for John, Matt, and Rob, I am Marwan. This is The Conduit. We will see you next time. Don't miss series finale Monday night, 8 p.m., everyone. All right.